discretion is advised.
Hello everybody out there, this is the Tech Mitchell Wright coming at you real quick with just a little brief underrated look at a trilogy that I feel deserves a little more credit than it gets at times. Is the Chronicles of Riddick, the Riddick Trilogy. Now I know that there was the game Butcher Bay that's supposed to be a prequel to all of it, and then in between Pitch Black and Chronicles of Riddick there is a Dark Fury, which was an animated series that's fairly enjoyable, but I'm just looking at the three films here: Pitch Black, Chronicles of Riddick, and Riddick. Now, a lot of people look at it this way: you either love Vin Diesel or you hate him. Now, I don't hate him. I do like his movies. I enjoy most of the things he's in, as far as his characters go. But when you really look at this film, you've got to think that this was one of your first truly anti-hero films that centered strictly around an anti-hero. He wasn't just a supporting character, he was a main character. And in Pitch Black, you kind of have to look at that movie as being very unique for when it came out, because that was a time of superheroes weren't extremely big yet, and to really think of him as a superhero, he's a Furian, which is a race that was obliterated by the Lord Marshal, which is in the second Chronicles of Riddick. But the Furians have some very inherent headstrong characteristics. So to say he's superhuman is not so much in this universe, but that he's Furian. Given that he is well trained, he is a badass.
Don't act like you're not impressed.
Hands down. But looking at him, first Pitch Black, like I said, the movie was unique. The whole idea of being stranded with this group of people, and he's this individual that a lot's not known, and come to find out he's an escaped convict on the run and trying to hide out. And when the ship crashes on the planet, and then everything goes black and a whole hell breaks loose, and the aliens, for the lack of a better word, come out to play. It's a very dark tone, and there are a lot of visual shots, and especially the dark shots, and the look through Riddick's eyes was new for its time. And I think it broke ground for several other movies to come, especially for a lot of the movies we have necessarily with darker tones or less cheesy tones as it comes. Even a lot of the stuff coming in the DC universe, I think that these three movies have laid the foundation. Now, Chronicles of Riddick was a little more polished. There was a little more money thrown into it. It still was a darker movie. He wasn't so much as anti-hero in that film, but I want to think that for myself, that's one of my favorite Riddick movies, especially bringing Jack back, and then having the priest, however you want to call it, the Reverend, also tying into it, as well as going back to Helion Prime, and then going to Crematoria, where he runs into Jack. That was more of a hero feel than anything. I mean, yeah, he's the bad guy, but in all honesty, you don't feel any real emotions or ties to the Mercs or anything like that. And as far as the Helion people, you don't really feel a whole lot of tie to it. It maybe is a criticism. They don't make you feel real human. You see more of a struggle, and the whole reason that Riddick is going back and fighting is necessarily for Jack, and I think that gave him a very, I know he's a Furion, but human feel to who he is, that he can bond, and that he has another side, and I like how it experienced and kind of explained a little more of his Furion past, and the whole thing with the Purifier as well, being bonded with him was a neat twist. But as far as the continuation of all these films go, you come to lastly Riddick. The third film, an actual film that came out, I enjoyed it. I know a lot of people will gripe that they weren't a big fan of there being a one world and one feel, and it's kind of a very barren, reddish, orange, tan, brown, whatever you want to call it, dirty kind of feeling to the world. But in its defense, given that it wasn't as necessarily, polished as far as all the different worlds that you see, all the different colors and environments that you had necessarily on Chronicles of Riddick with UV8. I can't remember the exact name, but it was the snow planet, Helion Prime, Crematoria, and then actually on the Necromonger ships. I think it did a great job of him telling the story in Riddick that, during his time with the Necromongers as the Lord Marshal, he got a little lazy. He lost a step, as he said. And this is somewhat Riddick finding himself again. And again, he bonds with that pup and raises it. And spoilers if anybody's worried about it. You see again that loss of his pup during the movie. It digs deep into him. But still at the same time, he is the bad guy in this, but you don't feel a whole lot of remorse for most of those mercs that die. Now, given I like the idea of the tie-in with the father of one of the guys that died in Pitch Black, and shame on me for not being prepared because I cannot think of his name, but I do love that they made sure that they called back to the first two movies, and that there was some tie-ins, and it wasn't just this complete movie off by itself that had no continuity. But the fact is that, you've got a lot of people that hate him, and that see him as evil, and see him as a bad guy. But in the end, as it all ties in the end, I enjoy the fact that he is still the hero. Several of them do still make it off of the world that they were on, and I don't believe that they ever mention the name of the world. If I'm wrong, please leave it in the comments. But these are very underrated films. I don't think they get half of the credit that's due. Now I know a lot of people are like, well, Vin Diesel, he doesn't have to say a lot. He doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue and everything. Yeah, but the thing is he doesn't have to have dialogue for that character. And for what he says and does, there's a lot of emotional, facial, and bodily acting that's going on. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, Vin Diesel lover, blah, blah, blah. It's whatever. It's whatever. You've got to take these shows as far as they are for face value, that they're an action movie, they're an anti-hero movie, they're a sci-fi movie, and you've got to sit back and watch and enjoy. There's not going to be a lot of mind benders, there's not going to be a lot of plot twists, but in the end, you've got a great action movie. You've got a great action star that plays the role perfectly to the point. He is Riddick. He will always be Riddick. And that's all there is that's said on that. As far as these go, these movies are not 10s. They're not 10s, but they're definitely 8s and 9s. The last Riddick, I would take a little of the points off, given the fact that they they weren't as CGI polished. Some of the jet bike scenes did seem a tad dated in its effects. But given that, the CGI creatures were well done, the world was well done, even though you kind of saw one vision of the world at all times, except for those brief moments that they were on those necromonger ships and getting off on those necromonger ships. But other than that, folks, you've got to give props where props are due, and I really do think that these films did lay a foundation for a lot of sci-fi movies and for a lot of superhero movies to come, to have a much darker and not so cheesy, happy-go perfection to their heroes, to see that there is good and bad, and there are weak moments, and sometimes your hero has to do, given a lesser word of extent, do some evil to do some good. So, given that is my take and my underrated on the Riddick Trilogy. Now, there has been talk of another movie and of a series that is set in the Riddick universe that will center more around the mercenaries that actually try to go after Riddick in several of the movies. But other than that, folks, love to hear some comments. We've got some more show coming for you here soon with the Muse and I. Try to do a phone call with the Sage. He is still very much involved in 3 Geeks behind the scenes. Just can't always get on camera, given time constraints. So other than that, stay tuned to the glow of those monitors. So we're going to catch you next time.